Happy to take questions.
If I can just start, why did you show a speech given to a Beijing university to the Chinese embassy first?
I made a speech in China where I criticised China, and I wanted to make sure that the Chinese government were not at all surprised by the fact of what I was going to say. Now, in China, I made a speech where I criticised the Chinese in terms of their handling of Hong Kong, in terms of their human rights records with the Uyghurs. Now, how many government ministers have gone to China and in China publicly criticised the Chinese government? That's actually what I did. You know, under this government, we've got Scott Morrison standing here at home, beating his chest while he leaves the field vacant in the Pacific, and we are now seeing the arrangement between Solomon Islands and China, which is unbelievable and which absolutely undermines our national security. I could not have imagined that our relationships with the Pacific could have been stuffed up so badly by this government. But what it indicates is that you've got a Prime Minister who's willing to talk a big game, beat his chest here, but when it comes to actually going out and doing the real work, once again, he turns up late, does not accept responsibility and blames everyone else.
Did you make any changes? Did you make any changes to that speech after you gave it to them?
Can I ask a question to the Shadow Treasurer?
Sure.
Charles, do you think that foreign aid needs to be increased? And if you become Treasurer in 4 weeks' time, will Labor be increasing foreign aid, and if so, by how much?
Yeah, foreign aid is an important part of the story, but it's not the whole story. Our relationships with our Pacific Island friends are crucial, and they are broader than the aid relationship. It is a fact that the government has cut aid, and it is a common view across the national security establishment that has been detrimental to our interests in the Pacific. Penny Wong has said, and others have said, that we will have a policy on the Pacific, and we will say more about it during the course of this election campaign. Foreign aid is part of the story, but it's not the whole story. Climate change matters to our Pacific Island friends. The way that we manage our defence investments matters to our Pacific Island friends, and so does our aid relationship, and we'll have more to say about it.
Labor's national policy platform is for foreign aid to hit at least 0.5% of gross national income. But you guys haven't specifically stated that during the election. Is that the policy that you're taking to this election?
We'll have more to say about foreign aid as part of a. We'll have more to say about foreign aid as part of a broader strategy for the Pacific during the course of this election campaign. Penny Wong has said that as recently as yesterday.
Mr Marles, did you make any changes to that speech after you gave it to the Chinese?
Absolutely not. And the assertion that's being made by the government is just another desperate attempt to divert from their failings in the Pacific.
Doesn't it look like you're in their pocket, though?
I let the people know what I was going to say, so there were no surprises. But there were no changes whatsoever made to a speech that I made in China criticising China in public. Now, what government minister has done that? And what we see here is a government desperately trying to divert attention from its failings here. Let's be really clear. Under their watch, they have let the Pacific go. Under their watch, they have made it so that Australia is not the partner of choice for Solomon Islands. And by virtue of that, our security is much worse than it would otherwise have been. I mean, this is a watershed moment in terms of Australia's national security, in terms of our place in the region, and it is a watershed moment which is very negative. And it definitely raises the increased prospect of a Chinese military presence in the Pacific, and that makes Australia less safe, and that's because Scott Morrison wasn't doing his job. Beats his chest here, does none of the hard work outside. It does not turn up on time, and as a result, we see the situation that we've got, and he is desperately trying to divert attention and desperately trying to blame everyone else.
On the Solomon Islands, Labor has heavily criticised the government for not sending Maurice Payne to try and salvage that deal. But we now know that our intelligence agencies were involved in the leaking of the deal, that it was more or less a done deal by that point. Why would we send our foreign minister to go and salvage something that was already stitched up? Isn't that a failed mission?
The failed mission here is the last 9 years of this government in terms of its place in the Pacific. the failed mission here is in terms of this government's ability to build relationships in the Pacific, and the chief person responsible for doing that ought to be the Foreign Minister. I mean, the idea that we're having this conversation now just speaks to the degree to which under this government they are constantly playing catch-up footy. I mean, they really are. And you know, Maurice Payne should have had the relationship with Solomon Islands government. But you know, my question here is, which ministers were there over the last year, over the last 2 years, building the relationships? Which minister in our government has Manasseh Sogavari's phone number in their phone? And why did it take so long to send anyone to actually go and see those in Solomons when it became clear that this agreement was on the table? You know, we've seen more action from the United States, who were there overnight, and we very much welcome the mission of Kirk Campbell, and we very much welcome the announcement that the United States is going to look to opening an embassy in Honiara. We will work, if we are elected, with the United States, as we have in the past in terms of our engagement in the Pacific. But what is manifest here is that this government has dropped the ball and they have not built any relationships, and Scott Morrison's responsible for that, Maurice Payne is responsible for that.